We continue our look at the book of Proverbs. Now, when we think of the Proverbs, we think of it as a book of wise sayings. But when we look at it in its totality, we see that it's so much more than simply a collection of disparate ideas. It's a book of life. It's a book that helps us navigate life, but also teaches us how we might receive life and preserve it. And today we're going to look at the beginning of wisdom, and that's acknowledging the one who is the source of our life, and that's the Lord himself. Today we might veer into some philosophical territory, but my hope is that this will be a practical message, practical in the sense that you'll be able to put it into action and it be of benefit to you. It's going to be practical in that we will learn that our egos at times need to be put in check if we're going to see the world as it is. At the same time, we need to hold on to the dignity that's inherent in each person. With that in mind, let me read from Proverbs chapter 3, beginning in verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Many years ago, I had the privilege of taking a group of college students on a missions trip to Nikolaev, Ukraine. Nikolaev is a port city in Ukraine along the Black Sea, and we were there at the local university teaching English as a second language. And I got to tell you, it was quite a trip for this Cold War era kid to go to a former Soviet republic and speak to people about the message of God's love and his mercy, while also imparting a practical skill to them. On the way back from Nikolaev, we flew first into Vienna, and then from Vienna to Atlanta. And that trip to Atlanta was an overnight flight. Now, after we were talking with the team and people were excited, conversations began to die down, and students went to sleep. And I took that moment of quiet to look out my window, and what I saw was a vast expanse of nothing. It was completely dark. And even though I couldn't see any specific thing, I got a sense of the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean, the vast space that was below me. And it filled me with a sense of awe and maybe even with a little bit of dread. Now, I know that isn't a singular experience. It's not just me who thinks that or feels that in moments like that. We all have that experience at one point or another as we're looking at the Grand Canyon, or we get a view of a vast ocean, or we're looking out at the expanse, the beauty, the majesty, but also the emptiness of outer space. We get this sense of how small we really are in comparison. And there is this awe, this dread, this moment of humility before the creation. And it's akin to worship. It's an acknowledgement of a greater power than ourselves. Proverbs 9:10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." That fear, that awe, that even dread, that's what this passage is talking about. Now, it's an uncomfortable moment, to be sure, but it's also right and necessary, because without this sense of awe, and again, even dread, we have a tendency to overreach. Our egos always spill their proper boundaries, and we make ourselves the center of the universe. We assume the place as the final arbiter over all things. We assume essentially the place of God. But to be mature and well-adjusted human beings, we need something to fill that ultimate space. that our egos would bump up against it and keep us in our proper sense of being a creation as opposed to being the infinite creator. We need to bump up against it, or we will expand into that space. In other words, to be proper, mature, well-adjusted adults, we must worship. It's just our nature. Something else must fill that ultimate space, or we will rush into it. And when we reject the idea of the divine, we become twisted and unpleasant versions of ourselves. To see the world as it really is, we must understand that we are the creature, divine in image, but a creation nonetheless, and there is a creator. That is the beginning of seeing the world as it is. That's the beginning of wisdom. Blessings on you all.